there. Welcome to Leadership Portraits. My name is Jennifer Wright, and I am your host, and I am here today with Brian Dedischew. Brian is a fractional professional strategic leader in the CIO, CTO space. And I'm excited about this conversation because it's really interesting to talk about leadership in technology, in addition to the whole fractional space. Fractional space is becoming really big right now. I don't know if you've noticed that. And he's got some really interesting insights into that. So welcome, Brian.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm so glad you got to join me today. So tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, and a little bit about what you focus on.
For sure, I appreciate that. Like you said, my name's Brian, and I've been around in the industry now, a couple different technology, sports and entertainment, fintech, data, and I've had a lot of enjoyment playing a lot of different roles over the years. And so, if you look at it from a technology perspective, like you were just suggesting, or from a business perspective and startups, to the ability to drive better operations and business processes, I've had the chance to do a little bit of all of that, and it's come down to what do you like to do most? And so, right now, I love working with startup companies, being able to help them get from point A to point Z. The smaller, the bigger the challenges that they have, the more enjoyment you get when you can actually understand how to solve those things. So when you ask the question, what is it a little bit about Brian? It's about Brian likes to be a problem solver. Brian likes to be the one that, understands the vision for where you want to get to and finds, different methods, opportunities, procedures, you name it to get us there. And it kind of applies across the rest of my career and really my life. If you look at, my kids, my house, my, you know, uh, family, it is all about, how to make the most out of what you're dealt and, being able to figure out the right set of challenges to overcome that get you to that next step. And so I've enjoyed my career over the last 30 years of being able to do those things and bring my family along the way, have a lot of fun outside of the traditional business world, camping, flipping houses, doing sports, coaching soccer, refereeing soccer, a lot of great things. But for me, it's all about, how can I help contribute in a meaningful way?
So you said something interesting that I wanna touch on a little bit. You talked a little bit about the startup world and how you've kind of become ingrained in that. One of the things that's interesting about the startup world is most people that are working in that world wear multiple hats. And I know you have a lot of background in the technology field, but how are you finding that kind of operating in a startup environment? Are you finding that yes, I can really like dig into the technology piece of it, or are you seeing that, like in many startups you have to wear kind of like multiple hats?
Hmm. That's a great question. There are so many ways to look at startups and, whether you are wearing multiple hats day one, or you're breaking down the problem into different pieces that you can focus on, or if you're running around really trying to coordinate the larger group effort towards a common goal. I like to use the word North Star. In a startup, you need something that gives you a direction that everybody can rally against and understand where are you at in the process and what does it take to get there. And there are times where you do have the luxury of focusing in on maybe a financial plan, or maybe you have the ability to really think through what is my product going to be into the market, or what is my technology platform going to be. But the reality is, when a startup, you're running fast and you got to be nimble and quick and flexible and have the ability to wear kind of that the technology, the operations, the business, and even sometimes the marketing hats to really get you to where you want to be. And so, if you're energized, if you feel like you can handle multiple priorities simultaneously, and you enjoy the conundrum of having to split your time between different facets of the business, startups are for you. If you really would prefer to have kind of a dedicated focus, really, do something really, really well, but really in one discipline, startups might not be, where you get the most enjoyment. But over time, startups turn into larger businesses, and that's where those type of individuals really shine.
So what would you say is kind of that tipping point of the sort of that sweet spot of where startups start to become like that next phase?
So that's another good question. I'm involved in two startups at the moment. One of them is a window manufacturing company, which is very different from where I came from an Equifax, at really the financial world and data world. And then I have another one that is kind of focused on the fintech space, and both of them are at different stages. They both start off with there's no money. That's the first question. How do you get money? Then to go do something, and then you get more money to do something else. And so, the official terms of seed, pre-seed, and then Series A and beyond funding is important. But it isn't until you start getting enough movement and capital in place that you can really start to diversify the resources that you have to then build that bigger bridge. And so that's really for me the tipping point. Once you've got enough money and enough gravitas in whatever discipline that you're trying to execute from a startup, it starts to turn the levers of, well, how do I slow down now to go faster? How do I, take the right disciplines and the different business processes and break them up across the different resources? And the moment you're allowed to do that, then it starts to turn into that next level business where you're maturing it and you're starting to grow. So it's exciting when you get to that point. I will tell you that it is a lot of
Yeah.
work to start from scratch, to build a brand, to understand what the market's looking for, and to get investors, and more importantly, individuals that really believe in what you're trying to do from a product, from a business, from a capabilities point of view. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And I think folks underestimate truly the amount of work that it does take. And when we talk about leadership, it's not just about being out there and being able to do the work. It's about understanding the vision, understanding where you want to be, and providing a path to get there. And it's the great leaders that I've worked with where they understand the challenges and the dynamics of a team and how they inform, they norm, they storm, all those dimensions of how a team operates that gets you through to that next step. And once you see things start to gel and click and you get those gears turning and you look to the person to the left and it's like, yeah, I know what you're working on now and I can help. And, all those things start to come together. That leadership across the different groups, the different individuals starts to come into play. And it's just, it's fun. It's really fun. But it can also be incredibly difficult and challenging to get to that point they need to be.
That it takes really strong leadership, I imagine, to operate in that kind of environment because you're asking people, like you said, it's a lot of work. And it's not to say that, other environments don't have a lot of work, but it's a lot of work but the payoff may not happen right away in some cases. So how do you really keep those people as a leader? How do you keep those people motivated when you're in that kind of environment? And how do you keep them from churning out of the organization or going and deciding to do something else?
It sounds like a really complex thing. Like, how could you possibly motivate someone to stay for a long period of time if they're not being paid? And I think the challenge that even big companies have is motivation doesn't always come in the form of payment. There are
Yeah.
other forms that you can look at, and it's a very simple thing of really understanding as an individual, what are your goals? What are you looking to do? What would get you up in the morning and have you thinking all night long? If we can tap into what those are, in my case, problem solving and challenging, I don't actually go work for the startups. I'm working all the time. It doesn't occur to me that I'm actually tracking hours for this company. It's not even about the pay. It's about the opportunity that I get to participate in. And when you get to that point, those individuals are priceless. It's not about the money at that point. It's about the end result. And finding ways to help bring folks to that realization. And it doesn't always work. There are individuals that strictly right now in their point in time in their life, it's about a paycheck. And I understand that you need to pay the bills. And others you can find there's a little bit more of a relaxed notion of I could invest some time into this for a larger payoff, but the reality is I want to be interested in it. I want to be motivated to participate. I want to have a voice in the solution. I want to be part of that changing of the world, as a startups like to do. And when you can tap into that, the sky's the limit.
Of course, we all have to pay our bills, you know, but sometimes that investment of our time can be just as valuable if we really see like a bigger, a bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the leader's job, right? Is to paint that
Yeah.
bigger picture, understand the paths that it takes to get there, and then help others come to the table to say, "Hey, I can deliver that," or
Yeah.
"I want to be part of that." And that's they can be really rewarding to empower members of your team or of the larger resource pool for any company to really have that opportunity. And it's kind of magical once you see folks no longer needing to be poked and prodded to deliver things, but they are at the table and delivering. And it's a great feeling to see that happen.
I imagine you get to see a lot of really interesting things kind of emerge out of that, like leaders emerging out of that, and those folks that you can really see kind of becoming those really important players in the company as you're going through that process. And I'm sure you probably see the ones that are not, maybe that's not the right fit for them as well.
I think that's a great observation. And I would say that it even applies to myself, but I'll start with you get to see the good and the ugly, right? You get to, see the ones that are taking the leap of faith and really trying to drive something and willing to risk failure in the hopes of success. And really that is, a fantastic way for me to look at things when I have a group of people because, you have to create that environment in which they can learn. And you can't
Yes.
learn without sometimes taking the wrong step or taking a risk. And at the same time, it's sometimes just not their cup of tea. It is something that they were interested in, but as they learn more, it's not something that they're going to be passionate about. It's not something they want to pursue. And you have to allow for that and help them find, well, what would be?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's within the company and sometimes it's not. And I have been on both sides of that coin where it's really exciting to be part of something big and huge. And then once you actually understand your role, well, maybe this isn't what I want to do anymore, and you've got to find a different way to go about your career. But it's the benefit of seeing all of that. To your point, that when you start to look at startups, when you start to look at maturing organizations, if I look back into my past, the larger organizations and how they evolved from a culture perspective, and especially when you start talking about transformation and the critical change that occurs, that can just stress that environment and cause a whole lot of shape shifting, if you will, from people and what they're looking to do.
Let's talk a little bit about the whole fractional role. Can you help, like, for anyone who's not super familiar with what fractional is, can you give us like a little bit of an explanation of what that, kind of what that means?
Sure. So if you were to think of a two posts, right? On the one hand, you have full-time employment. On the other side, you have a consultant. And we pretty much understand the difference between those two, of one being, hired full-time by the company and they have authority and accountability within the company, either as an individual contributor or as a leader with a team. A consultant typically will come in and have accountability for nothing, and they have responsibility to help drive or change a pattern. They will institute a new process, a business practice. They can help consult on how we might want to operate the business going forward, but they traditionally have no authority within the company over teams. Fractional lays in the middle. It is usually not full time, it's usually part time work, and it's usually where an individual has enough experience that they can come in as a part time agent that has authority over other teams, which means that even though they're not full time, they would have a team and they do have people reporting into them, and they have the responsibility and authority to take action on behalf of the company. So, an example of that would be for one of my companies, they're a metal fabrication shop, and they are about $4 to $5 million a year, and they cannot afford to have a full-time CTO, CIO, but they need the experience of someone at that level to help with an individual they have as, on their team to really put into place the practices for security, infrastructure, business process, and change. And so they hire me to come in part time, and I avoid all of the extra meetings that you would have as an FTE, all of the superfluous discussions, and you really get down to the execution of what do we need to do in order to be successful in those spaces. And I have the authority and accountability to make decisions on behalf of the company to achieve those outcomes. And so it's really a part-time CTO role with the authority to deliver those solutions at a budget that is friendly to the company.
And that's a great way to explain it. I love how you have laid that out. And, you know, fractional is becoming much more prevalent now. And companies, particularly startups and smaller companies, are really becoming very interested in the whole fractional role because they can bring in someone who has experience, who has authority, but they can do it on a lower budget, maybe on a part-time basis, until they can get to the point that they can hire someone full-time. So how are you finding the whole fractional world to be different from, I mean, you've spent a lot of time as a full-time employee and full-time leader with companies. How are you finding the whole fractional roles to be? Do you like them better? Is it so I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I think there's really three questions there, but let me
Yeah.
let me start with um, you know, fractional as a whole is becoming more popular because there's more of the type of individual that has that experience, that wisdom of having played that role or have gone through those scenarios or built those type of companies that are available now than before. And so when you look at the market, it's really the CFOs, the CMOs, the CROs, the CXOs. Those are the ones right now that are really popular because you can look at it as, I don't need a full-time financial officer. I need someone that can come in, get my books right, and get me on a strategy and then step back. Very easy to understand, very niche, very, easy to do. If you look at it from a revenue officer, same thing, or an operations officer. But when you start to look at security and technology, CTO, CISO, CIO, they're a little bit different because it's a larger role to play, and it's it spans, I think, a little bit bigger of a section of the business. Despite the fact that CFOs are very important, don't get me wrong, they touch everything too. But the way that the company can structure the teams and the effort, is a little bit different. And so it's a little bit of a latecomer in the fractional space to really put a lot of effort into the CTO, CIO. I will say that the individuals and teams and groups that I've worked with, once they realize what they can do part-time with someone in that level and caliber, it almost becomes a non-brainer, right? It's very easy to sell the budget of getting all of that for half the cost. Um, that being said, there's a lot of new trends today. And so when you ask the question of, what do I like about it? What do I enjoy about it? I think that's going to be different for every individual. For me personally, I am really excited not to have that go to work 9 to 5 and not have as much influence, as much persuasion, as much decision rights as I do now. I get to be part of multiple companies and great dynamic group of individuals. And so for me personally, I thrive on a little bit of chaos between the different groups and trying to figure things out. So for me, it's the best thing. But for others, again, if they like more structure and they want larger team responsibility, that full-time role is probably where they're going to be, most happy. But they're looking for that. Hey, I want to get in. I want to make a big difference, and I want to step back a little bit. Then, the fractional space is a wonderful place to do that in.
So if you think about a fractional leader, no matter what, CFO, CTO, whatever role they're playing, are there any, so if you were talking to someone who wanted to kind of enter that field, are there any specific skills that you would say is needed in order to be a successful like fractional leader?
I would say there's probably at least 6 distinct skill sets that I've thought about as, you transition into this space. Obviously, table stakes are experience. You have to have the experience in the role to do that. But for me, being able to craft a vision, succinct vision that is, you can execute against. You need to have kind of a growth mindset. It's going to be challenging in that space. So thinking about how you grow as an individual, how you grow your company, how you grow your leads, those things all lead naturally to the expansion of your abilities and how you can contribute to a company. Integrity. One of the biggest things that I see out there is individuals that may not know how to do something, but having a sense of integrity allows you to honestly deliver results. And where you don't know something, you go find somebody who does. And so being able to leverage that consistently is the next one. That you are, consistently delivering communication, you're consistently delivering, whatever aspects that you're being asked to deliver, that you are consistent in your style, your communication, your ability to influence others. And that kind of leads towards critical thinking. It's one of those skills that it's hard to teach, but that right to left thought process of how do I start at the end and work my way back to what are the tasks that have to get done to be successful, not only in your daily life or your Kanban board or your agile methodology, but also across the business as they start to reach hurdles. And then really at the end of the day, it's all about perseverance. Don't give up. It's going to be challenging. You have to have that mindset of I'm going to continue to do this every day and have the flexibility to change and adapt based on the results that are coming. But it doesn't stop me. It doesn't slow me down. It changes my direction. So for me, those are kind of the critical ones that I would say for anyone that's trying to get into the fractional space. If you have a mastery or some type of mastery across those 6, you will do very well.
So, as you kind of transitioned into this world of fractional and startups, a- are there any resources that you have found to be like really good resources for that, like books or podcasts or anywhere that you go to get really good information?
I tell you what, there's a lot of great information out there that you can absorb. My personal recommendation would be to start with one book. It's called Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life. It's by
Hmm.
Bob. I want to say his name is Bob Proctor, I think is his name. And
Okay.
it's on Audible, it's on paperback. You can listen to it in different ways. It is a completely different way of looking at life and the ability for you to control what you can control. And once you've read it, then everything else just starts to kind of align and dots start to move and connect. And the other part of that is surround yourself with what you want to be. So, for example, if you want to make millions of dollars, you should be surrounding yourself with people that make millions of dollars. If you want to be the best leader possible in your space, make sure you're surrounding yourself with those same leaders. If you want to be the next person that comes up with the greatest Apple product, you should be getting involved with all of the people that are driving Apple products, right? The idea is that surround yourself with those that are better than you so that you can learn from them and they will help pull you to your next level. And that's part of changing your paradigm in terms of how you want to operate and how you see yourself. You've got to have that vision of not just for the business, but for you. Like, where do you want to go and how do you want to get there? And more importantly, what will it take to get there? You can't learn those things just by guessing. You have to surround yourself, like you said, with some books, but really it's the people, in
Yeah.
my opinion, that give you the highest return on investment.
That is so very true, and it's one of the things I've kind of discovered over the last couple of years. The people I've had to make some adjustments to some of the people that I'm spending time with.
Mhm.
And I'm finding that if I find those really high quality people, you can find them in a lot of different places. It makes such a difference in um my thought processes and how I start to advance, what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's not to say that not everyone is great. It just means depending on where you're trying to get to, you have to identify those traits that will help you excel. And so everybody has, different reasons. If you really want to learn more about love, you're going to go after a certain niche and a certain type of individuals that will help you do that. If you
Right.
want to find out about the stock market, there's a different way about going about that. And it's not just books, but it's practicality of learning from those that have done it, been there, got that experience. And that it kind of ties into that whole, fractional, like why would you bring someone in? Well, because they've done it. You surround yourself with people that have done it. It's the same thing with some of the other hobbies that I have where if I'm flipping a house or I'm manufacturing windows or I'm building bathrooms, you're not finding those answers just in a book or on YouTube. You're finding someone to come do that work, and they've gotten good at it because they've done it for a very long time and they were able to achieve that. Usually, if you're an electrician, a master electrician, you've been doing a journeyman for 7+ years. You've got X number of hours underneath you for a master electrician license, and then you can write your own checks. So it all depends on where you want to be, what you want to do, and what gets you up in the morning. I mean, that is, to me, once you understand that and you've accepted that that's who I am, man, it makes every other decision so much easier about who to spend your time with.
Yeah. That's such great advice. I love that. I love that. Um, as you're kind of going through this journey, have you found I always like to talk about like habits and routines. Or do you have any like daily habits or any routines that have really helped you to um become better or really kind of start to foster the things that you're really wanting to achieve?
Yeah, there's always ways to um, drive consistency is one of those key skills I was talking about. And I do two things at night. Number one, I plan out a nightly routine where I plan out the next day. I plan 50% of my day. I don't plan 100% of it. I say, here's the 50% of my day tomorrow that's consumed with these things. The second thing I do is I think in terms of 15 minutes. It used to be when I was in, more of the corporate world, we'd have 30-minute, 45-hour long meetings
Yeah.
with all of these individuals. And I have found that, if you can't communicate and really get to a decision point in 15 minutes, then either you don't understand the subject enough, or it does require a larger conversation with other key experts. And you're not going to be able to do that in a single session with everybody else there. So I try to plan my day in 15-minute increments where I plan, I schedule, and I think 15 minutes. And if it goes longer than 30 minutes, that's a flag for me that at minute 35, we need to stop. We'll table it. We'll figure out the right way to address it and move on. And that allows me to maintain some degree of schedule as I'm juggling the chaos of multiple companies on a daily basis.
That hits me so hard because I can't tell you the number of times I would sit in hour and a half meetings and still not come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And I wish I had that kind of mindset back then because and I would come out of these meetings and would just be frustrated because we've now talked for 45 minutes or an hour or however long and we still didn't do what we said we were going to do. So I
Yeah.
love that. And
I
I
will I will say I
love
didn't
that.
have that 5 years ago. That's something that for me, when I was pushed, into a corner of what do I want to do next, it was a really tight struggle of what should I do? Do I play in security? Do I play in operations? Do I play in technology? Do I do all of it? Do I find something new? And I found that I needed to really curtail my time to really focus in on things. And when I talk with other people, another piece of advice I'll give is, I completely neglected my network for over 20 years.
I,
I would meet people, I would connect with them, and then I would never talk to them again. And I'd say for the last year, I've been pretty consistent with every week. I find 2 to 3 people to connect with. I try the 3+1 method, which was 3 people that was in my network plus one more that was not every week. And it's turned into more of a 2-3, type of thing. But the point is that you need to nurture your network. If there's one thing that I would encourage every leader out there to do is don't neglect the individuals that you connected with one time. And there's a gentleman by the name of Sebastian Engels. If you don't know him, go look him up on TikTok, YouTube, whatever. But one of the things that he talks about is, does this conversation that you're about to have, does it serve you? So what does that mean? Does it serve me from a spiritual, from a mental, from a work, from a personal perspective? And if it doesn't, then don't continue to have those conversations. And what you'll find is that when you have that kind of perspective, you'll get on calls with your network, and someone that you haven't talked to in 20 years, all of a sudden it's the right time and you connect. And next thing you know, you're having calls every 2 to 3 weeks. In other cases, you'll connect with somebody and go, this isn't working, and they ghost you or you ghost them. You try not to ghost, I don't recommend that, but the point is that you'll know right away the individuals that you can connect with. And once you form those relationships, I will tell you that some of my opportunities have come from 2, 3, 4 steps down the road of
Mm.
having a conversation. It wasn't the person I talked to originally from my network. And so I can't stress enough the importance of having those conversations and getting comfortable with introducing yourself to someone new. I just had someone pop up before this call that I'd reached out to last week, and I'm going, I don't know if they're going to reach out to me. Let's find out. Hope they do. And they did. And so now I'll get a chance to meet someone new and explore their world, but hopefully they can help me explore mine too. So,
One of the things that I discovered, I did the same thing that you were talking about. I ignored my network for a lot of years. And but one of the things I've discovered is, as I've started both nurturing my current network and continuing to build it, I'm finding so many nuggets. Like, almost every conversation I have, I get some nugget out of it, something that I learned, something, a book. I was talking to someone the other day, and he showed me how to, he showed me how to do shorts on YouTube. I'm like,
hmm.
I didn't know about that. That was something new for me. And so, like, every almost every conversation I have, I get some, I mean, if it's not a big nugget, it's a little nugget of, like, something that I learned.
So
Um,
I have one story that I'd like to share. Would that be okay?
sure. Yeah.
So, when you think about leadership and you think about just being an individual that wants to help, that wants to drive towards a solution or wants to be part of a solution, or, is put in a position where the impossible is what they're being asked to do. A lot of times folks get bogged down with, I can't do it for all of these reasons. I will come to you with 100 reasons why this can't be done. And I'm going to share a story really quick about a house that I flipped. And it really relates to business in terms of how to think outside the box and to challenge the status quo. But the story is like this. We bought a house, and I came into the project a little bit late. My partner had already started the project. And as part of it, they had to replace all of the basement walls that were caving in. So by the time I got there, the house was already lifted. They had replaced all the walls and they were setting the house down. And I walked upstairs, and immediately I knew there was something wrong. So I called my business partner over and I said, I got this water bottle. I'm going to set it on the ground and I want you to see what happens. And I guess you're probably picturing in your head at this point, the water bottle starts to roll. It doesn't roll a little, it rolls all the way across the house. The
Oh,
house is literally offset by 5.5 inches low on one side. And so when you walk around, you feel this like you're walking downhill or you're walking uphill. So
right.
the challenge was, we already replaced the walls. So what do we do? Well, there are really expensive options, 30, 40, $50,000. There are leave it alone, do nothing. Hopefully the people don't, worry about the incline. Um, but what I like to offer is a different way of looking at it. If you are inclined that you know what the outcome needs to be, you know that the house has to be level, then you can find creative ways, innovative ways by getting together with other people and talking through options. And I will tell you, the option that I took was, I went onto Amazon and I ordered 16 12-ton jacks. And I removed every fourth block from downstairs along the wall. And we manually lifted the house up, repositioned the blocks, redid the wood. And for less than $3,000, we were able to correct the issue.
Wow.
Now, Was that a typical way that someone would solve that? No, because they want money and they want you to buy helicoils and they want you to do the foundation lifting and all of these things. But did it solve the problem? Was it a long-term solution? Could the rest of the business or the rest of the partners or the rest of the house, was it supported in a way that it was going to be consistent and delivered? The answer was yes. So my encouragement to those that are out there is that you always hear people talking, think outside the box. What's really cool is when somebody does and you can see what it did and then you can build on that. And so I encourage everyone to kind of think about that story. And, you know, you would never think to do it that way until you're in a position where you're allowed to be creative. You're allowed to be innovative. You're allowed to get to that end state. And so the great leaders that are out there, I encourage you to help people figure out, be creative. Be that kindergartner that has no restrictions on what they want to suggest or the comments they want to make or the options they want to put forward, because one of those might actually work and save you both time and money. So
Yeah.
that's my short story for today.
I love that.
Yeah.
And something that you said during your story is getting together smart people to talk through the problem. I used to have a leader that would say, "None of us are as smart as all of us." And so, I mean, it's amazing what you can do when you get together. And it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about surrounding yourself with those right people. And when you surround yourself with those right people, when you run into problems like that, you've got the people that you can call on and say, "Hey, is talk through this with me and
Yeah,
help see if you can help me come up with a solution."
absolutely.
Yeah.
Leadership is about, the ability to bring people together, to coordinate, to facilitate. It is not about, marching orders. It is not about directing. Those are the things that individuals that you have on your team that are good can do on their own. What they need is direction, and they need you to trust that they can get there. And as soon as you have that, bringing those people together, man, it is a powerful thing to have a bunch of men and women in a room and are able to really dive into an issue and not be fearful of, if I say the wrong thing, am I going to be frowned upon? That is the biggest, and I think the most single impactful thing we can do is to create that environment where those are okay.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fantastic conversation. I mean, the insights that you've had have been so good. I have two more questions for you though before we wrap up.
yeah.
Um, what's next for you?
So I am about to take on another startup company that is in the financial health space as their CTO. And so I'm looking forward to starting that in a couple of weeks and really bringing that from a company that's been around for a little while to getting seed funding. And that'll be a first time for us to get a very large injection of cash to go create the right SaaS and mobile application. So from a technology standpoint, I'm excited to go drive that. On the flip side of that, I have a window manufacturing company that we started that I have a large equity stake in. And for me, that's my retirement plan. And so I'm continuing to build that out with the group so that when my kids stop college, I think in 7 years, I will just be able to relax and enjoy the fruits of that company. So that's on the horizon. Now, that being said, you never know what's going to happen. The economy, the things change, and so I'm always on the lookout for my fourth or my next fourth fractional work, or depending on where things go. If there's a great opportunity for a full-time, role that really caters to the way that I'm able to operate and contribute and deliver, very much open to those type of things if they come my way.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. All right, last question. If someone wanted to reach out to you, get in contact with you, add you to their network, what would be the best way to do that?
The single best way is to find me on LinkedIn and my email address and connect with me there. I spend a lot of time making sure that that network is always, being extended and expanded. So that's probably the best way. You could also, I think in this article, you'll have my phone number and
Yeah.
they can feel free to reach out to me directly or by email.
And for the podcast listeners, I all of that information is in the show notes. So check out the show notes, and you'll find his LinkedIn link and everything else there. So awesome. Well, thank you, Brian. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. And good luck with these new exciting ventures you have going on. It sounds like a lot of fun.
It absolutely is. It's been my pleasure. Jennifer, great questions. I love the format. This has been a great opportunity to kind of share some of my experience and background, but I love the way that you interrogate and question and dive into some of the answers so we can expand on that. So that was fantastic. And I definitely look forward to future conversations.
Yes, thank you so much. And for the audience, thank you for listening. And until next time.
Thanks for watching. Hopefully you got some great insights from this video. If you did, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. If you would like your own leadership portraits profile, check us out at leadershipportraits.com.